The night wasn't quiet. It pretended to be. Above the Syrian highlands, the wind carried the smell of burning oil and wet stone. Fires glowed in the distance like dying stars. The war had torn this place apart. Villages reduced to ash, rivers turned to mud, and every echo seemed to carry the memory of someone screaming. A squad of 6 soldiers trudged through what used to be a street. Now it was a graveyard of metal and shattered glass. They moved in silence and trained. Alert, tired, at the front, Captain Reeves, tall and built like a wall, scanned the horizon through night vision goggles. Behind him, the comms officer muttered into a broken radio, trying to reach command. And then, the last in the line of the quietest of them all, Ilara Kane. Ilara's boots sank into the muddy ground. Her face was half hidden behind a black scarf. A thin scar ran from her temple to her jaw, a scar she never explained. To the others, she was just the medic. Too calm, too silent, too strange. They didn't know she had seen more death before the age of 15 than most soldiers ever would. They didn't know her village was burned by the same men. They were now sent to hunt, and they didn't know that her weapon, the strange metallic crossbow strapped to her back, wasn't standard issue. It was personal. The mission was simple, at least on paper. Retrieve an informant, neutralize any hostiles, exfil by dawn. But nothing in war is ever simple. Their informant's last signal came from an old fortress built into a mountain ridge, a place locals called the Silent Gate. They said once you entered that place, you never left. The squad reached the base of the ridge just as thunder rolled across the dark sky. Rain began to fall, heavy, relentless, washing blood and dust together into one color. "Movement ahead," whispered Sergeant Dunn. Captain Reeves raised a fist, signaling the team to halt. Through the rain, faint red lights flickered near the fortress walls. Drones. The captain cursed softly. They knew we were coming, but it was too late. A blinding explosion ripped the ground apart, and the first step had triggered a hidden mine. The shockwave slammed them into the dirt. Gunfire followed immediately. Tracer rounds tore through the rain, slicing the night like lightning. Ambush. "Take cover!" Reeves shouted. The squad dove behind shattered trucks and broken walls, returning fire blindly into the darkness. But there were too many. Shadows moved between the ruins like demons. Their radios hissed, no signal. The extraction point was 3 kilometers behind them, unreachable. In less than 2 minutes, the team was pinned down and cut off. And then, while chaos screamed around them, Ilara moved. Her eyes scanned the horizon calmly, almost too calmly. Her breathing slowed, her heartbeat dropping into rhythm. She had trained herself for this, and for silence, for stillness. She reached into her pack and pulled out her crossbow. It was unlike anything anyone had seen. A mix of old metal and modern engineering, handmade, scarred like its owner. Each bolt had an orange glowing tip, compressed magnesium cores. Fire bolts, designed to ignite on contact and burn even in rain. As she loaded the first one, Sergeant Dunn glanced at her, half laughing even under fire. "You're really bringing that toy to a gunfight?" Ilara didn't answer. She didn't need to. She looked past him, toward the hill where the enemy's silhouettes flickered through the lightning. Then she whispered softly, almost to herself, "Don't move until they can't." Time seemed to freeze. Her breath was steady. The world around her disappeared. Only the target remained. She released the trigger. Thwump! The bolt cut through the storm, glowing like a comet, and a second later, the ridge exploded in flames. A drone burst apart mid-air, raining burning metal down on the attackers. For a heartbeat, no one moved. No one spoke. Even the rain seemed to pause. The enemies froze in confusion. The SEAL team stared, speechless. Ilara's silhouette stood against the firelight, small, steady, unstoppable. Captain Reeves whispered, "What the hell was that?" Ilara's voice came through the comms, low and calm. That was a warning. Then she looked at the burning ridge and added, "Next one won't miss." Bullets started flying again, angry, wild, desperate. But something had changed. The enemies weren't charging anymore. They were hesitating, afraid to move. And in that hesitation, Ilara raised her crossbow again, her eyes glowing orange from the reflected fire. The air seemed to whisper the same words through every burning alley, every ruined wall, "Don't move." And in that moment, terror itself took a breath and stopped. The rain had turned to smoke. The ground trembled as flames climbed the walls of the ancient fortress. What was once a silent ambush had become a burning nightmare, and at its center stood Elara Kane, the woman her squad thought was just a medic. Until now. Captain Reeves crouched behind a half-collapsed wall, his ears ringing from the blast. He looked toward the ridge where the explosion had torn through the enemy's first line. Bodies, drones, and debris burned like fallen stars. "Elara, what did you just do?" His voice trembled. Half awe, half disbelief. Elara didn't answer. Her gaze stayed fixed on the ridgeline. The scar on her jaw glowed faintly under the firelight, and in her eyes there wasn't fear. There was focus. She pulled another bolt from her pouch, this one engraved with small carved words, "For those I lost." She whispered to herself, "You burned my home once. Now it's my turn." From the smoke, new enemies emerged. Mercenaries, armored, trained, ruthless. They weren't soldiers. They were hunters paid to kill anything that moved. The leader barked orders in Arabic through a headset. "Flank from the west. Pin them down. The woman with the bow, bring her head." They had no idea what kind of war they'd just started. Elara moved like a shadow, slipping through fire and ruin, reloading as she went. Each step was precise, each breath measured. She wasn't running from death. She was running with it. Her team tried to follow, but she was already gone, vanishing into the storm. Flashback, 10 years earlier, the screen of her memory flickered with fire. A small mountain village, her home, glowing orange as it burned. Men with rifles kicked open doors, dragging people out. Among them, her father. He shouted for her to run, to hide under the cellar. She never forgot the sound of the gunshot that followed. When dawn came, her home was gone. Her family, gone. Her world, ashes. That day she made herself a promise. If fire can take everything from me, then I'll learn to make fire fear me. Back in the present, her vow became real. She reappeared behind a wall, aimed her crossbow toward the fortress gate. Fwump. The second bolt hit a fuel drum. The explosion sent a wall of flame roaring across the valley, cutting off enemy reinforcements. The mercenaries screamed and ducked. One tried to fire, but his rifle melted in his hands. Panic spread. They had never faced an enemy who fought like this, one who used silence, patience and precision instead of chaos. Through the flames, someone shouted, "She's not human! She's a demon!" Captain Reeves heard it and almost believed it. "Elara, fall back, you're alone out there." His voice cracked over the broken comm. Static answered. She didn't fall back. She couldn't. Her mind wasn't in the present. It was in the cellar of her childhood home, hearing the gunfire again. Another mercenary came from behind the rubble. She didn't hesitate. A quick turn, a flash of light as the bolt hit his chest. The explosion launched him backward into the rain, his body burning before it even touched the ground. And then silence again. Only the sound of crackling fire and falling ash. At that moment, Reeves realized the truth. Elara wasn't fighting for them. She was fighting because of them. This battlefield wasn't just another mission. It was her reckoning. He watched her through the smoke, standing alone against dozens, surrounded by death but somehow untouched by it. He whispered to his men, "Stay low. Let her lead. We move when she moves." For the first time, a team of hardened soldiers followed the steps of a single woman with a crossbow. The fortress lights began to flicker. The enemy commander inside barked new orders. "Find her! Burn the ruins! She's one person." He didn't know he was already too late. Elara had infiltrated the outer wall. She moved silently, killing the generators one by one, plunging the entire fortress into darkness. The firelight from the battlefield flickered across her face as she reached the inner gate. She loaded her next bolt, the tip glowing red-hot. On it, carved in tiny letters, were 3 words. "Don't move, burn." She exhaled slowly, remembering her father's words. "Real fire doesn't roar." "Elara, it waits," then she fired. The bolt struck the fortress gate. The magnesium core ignited instantly, blowing the reinforced steel door off its hinges. The explosion painted the mountains in orange and gold. Inside the fortress, panic erupted. Enemies scrambled, shouting orders, tripping over each other in the dark. And then, from the smoke, a voice echoed through the corridors, calm, cold. Ghost-like. "Don't move." The voice seemed to come from everywhere. Shadows moved along the walls, and one by one men began dropping, bolts in their armor, fire swallowing their screams. Outside, Reeves and the team watched in stunned silence. Sergeant Dunn whispered, "Sir." "She's inside that fortress alone." Reeves nodded, gripping his rifle. "And she's winning." By the time the gunfire stopped, half the fortress was burning. The rain hissed as it tried to smother the flames. And in the middle of it all, Ilara stood on the stone rampart, her silhouette framed by the inferno behind her. Her face was streaked with ash and rain. Her crossbow smoked from heat. She looked down at the chaos below, whispering to herself, "This isn't vengeance. This is justice." Then she turned back toward the dark horizon, where more enemies were surely coming. Her team watched from below, not knowing if she was still human, or something forged by war itself. Smoke curled like black ribbons through the broken fortress. The rain hissed as it met the fire, creating steam that blanketed the valley. Every sound was muffled now, except for the slow rhythmic steps of Ilara Kane. Her crossbow hung low, the metal glowing faintly from heat. Around her, the stone walls were scorched and cracked, painted with shadows that danced like ghosts. She moved carefully, scanning every corner. The enemies she'd burned weren't just soldiers. They were mercenaries hired by someone powerful. Someone who wanted her specifically dead, and she knew exactly who. As she stepped over a fallen body, she froze. A faint mechanical click echoed from under her boot. Mind she didn't move, not even a breath. Her eyes darted to the floor, a small pressure plate almost invisible under the soot. She could feel its vibration through her boot. One wrong shift and she'd be gone. "Ilara, come in." Captain Reeves's voice crackled through the comms. "Status?" she whispered, her voice calm but cold. "I said don't move. This time I'm talking to myself." Slowly, she reached into her vest, pulling out a thin blade. Sweat rolled down her cheek despite the cold rain. Every second stretched into eternity. She slid the blade under the plate and jammed it in place. Then, carefully, she stepped back. Click. The mine didn't detonate. She exhaled, but just as relief touched her lips, a gun cocked behind her. "Step away from the wall," a deep voice ordered. Ilara turned her head slightly. A tall man stood in the shadows, his uniform black, his face hidden behind a mask. The insignia on his chest stopped her cold. Black Falcon. She knew that symbol. It haunted her nightmares. He stepped forward, lowering his rifle slightly. "So it's true," he said in a thick accent. "The ghost of Ember Squad still breathes." Ilara's pulse slowed. "You were there," she whispered. "At the burning," he smirked beneath his mask. "We lit the sky that night." Her eyes filled with heat, and not from fear but from rage. The name Ember Squad wasn't just a memory. It was her past, flashback. 7 years earlier, before the scars. Before the silence, Ilara was part of a classified task unit known as Ember Squad, specialists in covert infiltration, operating behind enemy lines. Their motto, "We burn to protect." But one night during a mission in a small border village, something went wrong. Intel was wrong. The village wasn't a weapons cache. It was full of civilians. When the airstrike came, they were trapped. Half her team died in the flames. The other half betrayed her. They blamed her for the operation's failure, saying she leaked the coordinates. She was left behind, presumed dead, but she didn't die. She crawled out of the ashes with half her face burned and her soul shattered. Since that night, she had been hunting every man who wore the Black Falcon insignia. The last one was standing right in front of her, back to the present. The masked commander smirked, lifting his rifle. "Orders were to bring you in alive," he said. "But after what you did tonight, maybe I'll make an exception." He fired. Ilara dove behind a pillar, shards of stone flying past her face. The blast echoed through the fortress. She rolled, came up on one knee, and fired a bolt. Thwump! Boom! The explosion tore through the wall, but he was fast, already moving. They circled each other through smoke and fire like two predators in a cage. She reloaded, whispering under her breath, "For Ember Squad." The next bolt hit his leg. He stumbled, growling. But before she could fire again, something hit her shoulder. A bullet. The impact spun her sideways. Pain ripped through her body as she hit the ground hard. Her hand clutched her bleeding shoulder. She'd been shot clean through. Her crossbow slid out of reach. The commander limped toward her, laughing. "Looks like the ghost bleeds after all." Ilara's vision blurred. Rain fell through the shattered roof, sizzling on burning debris. Her heartbeat slowed. Her hand reached weakly toward her crossbow. Just inches away, then, her comms cracked alive. "Ilara, reinforcements inbound." "Just hold on," Reeves shouted, but her voice came out in a whisper. "No. This is my fight." The commander raised his weapon again. "Any last words?" Ilara smiled faintly, blood on her lips. "Yeah." "Don't move," he frowned. Then looked down. A small red light blinked near his foot. One of her bolts, half broken but still alive, had rolled beneath him. His eyes widened. No, boom! The explosion threw him into the wall, the blast lighting up the entire chamber. Ilara was hurled backward, the fire washing over her like sunlight through smoke. When the echo faded, everything was still. The commander was gone. Only ashes remained. Ilara lay on the cold floor, bleeding, exhausted but alive. Her crossbow was cracked, its strings broken, but the fire within her hadn't gone out. Reeves and the squad burst into the chamber moments later. They froze at the sight, smoke, fire, destruction everywhere, and Ilara at the center, barely breathing. "Jesus," Reeves whispered. "She did it. Alone." Sergeant Dunn knelt beside her. "Ma'am, we've got you. You're safe." Her lips curved into a faint smile. "Safe? Not yet." She stared at the burning fortress walls and whispered, "There's still one name left." Then her eyes closed, and everything went dark. The sun rose slow that morning, spilling gold across the grey mountains. Where the fortress once stood, smoke curled lazily into a sky finally free of thunder. It was over. The war hadn't ended, but the night that tried to end her had. In a small field hospital miles away, Ilara Kane floated somewhere between sleep and waking. She could hear heart monitors, quiet footsteps, the faint rustle of rain outside the tent. Every sound felt heavy, real, but far away, like echoes underwater. Then came a voice. "You're safe now." "Ilara, Captain Reeves." He sat beside her bed, his arm in a sling, his face streaked with exhaustion, but lit with something gentler than she'd ever seen on him. Gratitude. Ilara tried to speak, but her throat was dry. "You made it," he said softly. "You all did. Because of you." Her eyes fluttered open, weak but steady. "I didn't save anyone," she whispered. "I just refused to run." Reeves smiled faintly. "Sometimes that's all it takes to change everything." Days turned into weeks. Each sunrise found Ilara a little stronger. Doctors cleaned her wounds. The scar on her shoulder would stay, but she didn't mind. It matched the others, the map of her survival. She'd spend long hours staring out of the medical tent at the horizon. The same mountains that once burned now glowed with soft evening light. Some nights she couldn't sleep, haunted by the memory of fire, by voices she couldn't forget. When the panic came, she'd close her eyes, breathe deeply, and whisper to herself, "Don't move," not a command this time, but a prayer. A reminder that even after destruction, stillness could bring peace. One afternoon, Reeves came with papers. "Headquarters wants to promote you," he said. "Medal of Valor, public ceremony, big speech." Ilara looked at the forms, then pushed them back gently. "I don't need applause," she said. "I need quiet." He nodded, understanding. "So what will you do now?" She smiled faintly. "Teach, build, help people breathe again." Weeks later, Ilara left the base. She traveled through villages the war had left in ruins, helping to rebuild homes, teaching first aid, showing children how to find water, how to listen to wind before storms. To them, she wasn't a soldier. She was the woman who came back from the fire. They'd ask her about the battle everyone whispered about, the fortress, the night of the firebolts. She never told the full story. Instead, she'd say, "The fire wasn't my enemy. It was my teacher." The children didn't understand at first, but when they watched her move, calm, patient, unafraid, they began to see what she meant. Months passed. Peace crept slowly back into the valleys. Reeves visited her one evening while she was helping rebuild a bridge across the river. He watched her laugh with the villagers, something he hadn't seen her do before. "You know," he said, "Command still talks about that night. They call you the flame that waited." She chuckled quietly. "Sounds dramatic." "They mean it," Reeves said. "Your story keeps people alive out there. When a mission goes wrong, they remember you, the medic who never panicked, the one who told her enemies not to move." and taught her friends how to. Ilara looked toward the horizon where the sunset bled into gold. "I don't want to be a legend," she said. "Legends burn too fast. I just want to be someone who didn't give up." A year later, a new memorial stood at the rebuilt fortress. The walls were clean stone now, covered in climbing vines. At the gate hung a single plaque. "When the world burns, be the one who listens." Ilara Kane visitors often left flowers or a single arrow carved from wood. Recruits would stand in silence, staring at the name of the soldier who turned fear into patience. One twilight, Ilara returned there alone. The air was cool, and the river below shimmered with starlight. She sat by the water, the repaired crossbow resting beside her, not as a weapon but as memory. A child from the nearby village approached, holding a wooden toy bow. "Miss Ilara," he said shyly, "the others said you fought the fire." She smiled, her eyes reflecting the fading light. "No," she said softly. "I listened to it. That's how I learned not to be afraid." The boy tilted his head. "Can you teach me?" She nodded. "First lesson," she said. "Don't move. Feel the world breathing around you. The river, the wind, your own heart. Once you can hear them all at once, you'll know what to do." That night, as the stars spread across the sky, Ilara closed her eyes and listened. No gunfire, no screams. Only the sound of water and wind. For the first time in years, the silence didn't scare her. It healed her, because she finally understood what all the fire, pain, and loss had been trying to teach her. That true strength isn't in how loud you fight, but in how quietly you rise again. And somewhere, whispered by the wind that swept across the valley, came the echo of her voice, "Don't move until peace finds you."